Lying in a makeshift bed, Huynh van Dat is heard wailing. His thin hands are seen clutching at his emaciated chest, where his ribs are visible through his sagging skin. But most shocking of all is his face, which is green and rotten with gangrenous flesh. Dat's face has been slowly eaten away by a mysterious disease, which has claimed the roof of his mouth, his cheeks and his eyes. The 51-year-old, from Saigon, in southern Vietnam, can no longer eat and can barely talk. But after the story and pictures were published in local media, a team of medics visited him and promised to do what they could to help in order to ease his suffering. However, the reports did not indicate when the treatment would start or whether there was any hope of repairing any of the horrific damage. While he can barely talk, he still has the ability to touch and hear. Despite his dire condition, Dat's wife says the family are now too poor to take him into hospital, Vietnam.net reports. When his funds ran out, he returned home and tried to get by using traditional medicine based on herbs he could find locally. His wife said, the disease, which started with a hole in his nose, simply grew and it hurt his nose, upper jaw and his eyes. Several months later, the hole got bigger and Dat had further surgery after the bridge of his nose collapsed, but this also failed to help. Despite being told another operation could solve the problem, he could not afford all medical treatment that was required. Dat went to Ho Ho Hospital in Saigon to be examined. Doctors realized there was a problem with his nose partition, which was diagnosed as a deviated nasal septum, and which they operated on. But it did not seem to slow the pace of the disease, and a year later Dat discovered whenever he drank water, it ran into his nose through a hole in the roof of his mouth. Who is also 51, said her husband's condition first presented itself in 2004, when he began getting nosebleeds 3 or 4 times a day. She said, he was taking traditional medicines but they didn't make any difference, and then he also started to have problems with his eyes, which were constantly watering. Dat's wife, Huynh said although he could no longer eat properly or speak, he was still of sound mind, and he was well aware of the horrific fate he has been suffering since symptoms began 11 years ago. After the heartbreaking story appeared in the press, top doctors in the country have agreed to take on his case. There is no bleeding, but when he could still talk he told us it was incredibly painful. Now blind, Dat spends his days lying in his makeshift bed,